folks, and welcome to part 2. So we're going to just take what we've done with our combined torso mass and we're going to now start. I'm going to square off the pelvis as I mentioned in part 1, and we're going to add our limbs nice and simply, nice and gesturally. Some of you, I have done a previous video lesson on figure drawing, so this really is kind of hitting some of the same beats as that, covering some of the same ground, but we are focused more now on a bit more on construction. I think the previous figure drawing course I did was a bit more about gesture. This is a bit more about construction, just using some basic shapes, and certainly that combined mass and the bean kind of form it takes. So we'll now continue on and add a few limbs. So let's go into my reference images now. So exactly the same process to begin with. We're going to start with that core that we covered in part 1, and then we'll just elaborate slightly on that. So we're going for this pose here. So let's have a look at the inclination of the neck and shoulders. So I'm actually going to use a line here from the back of the shoulders for this pose. Just want to get a line there. Okay. Now you can see now with this line of action we're curving down this way now. So rather than out and over as we were in some of the previous drawings, this one's starting at the pit of the neck about here. Oops, sorry, you can't see that. Come back down again. So that's the angle of our shoulders. Pit of the neck I'm going to have here, and then we're just curving this way. Okay, so you can also hold your pencil up, straight line. I'm trying to see if I can do that on camera. So I'm holding it up, line down through the sternum, but this is a straight line. I'm not using a curved line, down to the peak of the triangle of the pubic area here, and again I can see the angle there, so I can almost just draw that as well. Okay, so this is the curve of the forms on that, coming down to that peak. Okay, so I'm going to come up with the rib cage form, which actually comes out much further here. Pelvis down here. Okay, so we have our beam form there. Let's move that so you don't have the shadow. Okay, so that's the V shape of our pelvis. The neck's coming up here. I can see that the chin is pulled slightly more in towards the rib cage, so this is not going to be quite the halfway point here. Okay, so it's not going to be coming up quite as high, a little bit lower. Remembered to put my timer on this time, everyone, so I don't know how long the last video was until I edit that out. So hopefully now I've got my timer going, we'll be able to keep these to the 40-minute mark each video. Okay, so that's our combined 3 masses there. So our combined 2 masses for our torso and then the head and neck. So in total three masses together. Let's just put on what the breasts would be. draw this way. As you all know, I tend to hold my pencil when I'm doing gesture drawing like this, but because of the way I'm sitting at the moment, I don't really have the option to do that. So I would generally suggest, if you do have the space, to work by holding your pencil with the thumb on top of your pencil here, and the barrel of the pencil resting nestled in these four fingers. Okay, so, and it's like a, you can see now I'm overhand, and I would use my whole arm here for nice long loose flowing lines, as opposed to, so I'm using my shoulder here, and my entire arm gives me much more mobility and range of movement. If I'm just using my wrist and holding it like I would hold a pen, then my range of movement is limited by the range of movement of my wrist and the position of my wrist. Obviously I can move my wrist around, but if I was just to work in one area, there is a limited range of motion, so I can't go further out here. This is as far as really I can go with my wrist. Whereas if I'm holding a pencil like this, I can come out wherever I need to with these lines. Okay, so let's think about adding our limbs. So for the limbs, essentially we're just thinking about the limbs being just basic cylindrical shapes. Okay, maybe they're wider at one end and they taper, but it's cylinders we're looking for. And when we come to shade that, if we have the start of a shadow, then it's a nice simple way of shading that form. Okay, so let's now think about where our legs are going to come. So you see this leg is coming slightly towards us, so this cylinder would actually be coming this way. Okay, so you see that coming out that way towards us, and this leg is doing the opposite, is going away from us, this lower leg, so that would be going that way. Okay, so we see more of the opening of the top of the cylinder for the leg receding in space, and we see more of the opening of this end of the cylinder for the leg advancing in space. Okay, but if you can just simplify it first of all just by just going for the general direction and shape of the forms and the contour of that shape. And for the feet, just use some basic, just think about the contour line connecting around, almost if we've covered the envelope technique in class, just simplifying the overall shape like that. So it's just pretty much kind of a wedge form coming down here, a bit like a webbed foot or something, just for simplicity. That might have to come out a bit more. Okay, and also a good thing to look for as well is your line of balance, your center line of balance. So if I drop a line straight down through from the sternum down, the center of the pit of the neck, where the clavicles meet, drop a line straight down and just see where that comes in relation to the feet. So it's about here really. So the line from here down here should be, so I can see my feet need to be further over to have that balance. You're slightly off balance at the moment. So this line, putting this line in initially and seeing where that falls on your figure. Actually no, it's not quite central to the feet, it's just the toes are a bit more over here. So that's useful to have that in from an early stage. Just drop that line down. So let's go back over and, oh god, this chair is terrible. I must get a new chair. So let's just move those over a bit. So I'll bring this knee out a touch more and have this leg come out here a bit more. Okay, but just see a nice, I've got a straight line for this side, slight C curve for this side, C curve here, C curve here, another C curve there. So you can see all those curves that I mentioned before, the three different types of line that we use, the C curve, S curve, all coming into play here now. Then we have this shoulder coming out from there for this arm. Again, just go for the actual contour shape first. I can see that this is a cylinder that would be coming in here, and that's not actually right. Got to make sure, look at your negative space as well. So negative space is the space we see beyond the model, the background peeking through there. So I want to make sure that I have enough negative space in there. So I'm just going to have a little look at that space first, and then that will give me really the length of the arm. And now I can add that cylinder just there. Okay. And the hand occupies this area, but again, we're not going to go into feet and hands. That's a slightly more complex area, which I will cover in future sessions. But for this one, we won't be looking at those forms, complex forms. Okay, and I can come over for this arm. Again, just some nice simple lines to begin with. You can just use some lines just to roughly describe where that arm is and how far it's coming out. Nice and light. I know the hand's coming a little finger there, this finger down to about here. My wrist is roughly about there. And then I can just start to add a bit more information just there. Okay, so that's kind of where we want to be. Let's bring this rib cage coming in here. We can see the definite crease of the rib cage there. Coming down, our navel's here, a little bit higher. So the navel basically occupies when we have this our egg shape here, rib cage here, pelvis here, and then we attach it there with the side muscles. The navel is generally midway between that and where the muscles connect to the pelvis, just there. Okay. So now I can go in once I've done that and just think about where the shadows lie. There's not a great deal of shadow on this figure, but there is some. The head definitely in shadow there. Sorry, I hope you can't hear my stomach rumbling. I've not actually had breakfast yet today, which is very remiss of me. Okay, so pretty much all of this leg is kind of in shadow here. There's a bit of light touching this leg, but from here downwards it's pretty much all in shadow. There's a little bit of leg peeking through there. Okay, so then we've got that, so we can just fill that in, as I said, with just a nice simple flat value. Value as well. So this is the first step of just separating light from dark. So our shadows from the lit areas, and we just use a single value at this stage just to separate the two. But in part 4 you'll see that we then just extend those values a bit more in the darks, so we have a bit of variation in the values that we see in there. But as I mentioned also, this is all about quick poses. So we won't have a great deal of time to fully render the figure. But this, as you'll see when I just work this through and out, just filling in these shadow areas, this is going to be more than enough to create a sense of where the light's coming from and where the shadows are coming down through the figure. Okay, so that's it for that one. So let's go and do one more drawing. I wasn't going to paint this one, as I mentioned in the previous video, because it's the same process, but I might see if I've got a bit of a cheaper watercolour pad here, see if that's slightly better. So I might be able to just do a quick painting there, just showing you the kind of the rate that I'm working at with these. I don't want to be too laboured with everything. I just want to get the impression of the forms nice and simply. You can see I've not gone in and really refined the contour. We'll be doing that in part 3 a bit more, where we'll go in and we'd actually start to really look at the contour and shapes going from the outside in here, and you know, the muscle of the deltoid shoulder muscle here coming down, and this, and then I'd spend a bit more time just looking at this deltoid sitting in here and that shape as it comes around to the arm there. Okay, but we'll be doing that in part 3 to a minor extent. We're not going to go crazy with the contour. Again, just keeping in mind that these are supposed to be relatively quick drawings. Okay, so there we go. I want to do one where I can just show you the squaring off of the pelvis. So I want a pose that's going to allow me to do that. So I think this one's good for that. Okay, so let's just flip this over. So again, line of the shoulders, kind of here, pretty horizontal. Pit of the neck, that line of action. So that's my pit of my neck here, line of action coming down to my V there. Again, you can just use a straight line between the two. In this case, it's actually perfectly vertical as it comes down here. Okay, so let's now go in and bring in that rib cage form. You can see egg shape, narrow at the top, wide at the bottom. Head height oval in, or ellipse. Okay, now remember, this ovoid form of the pelvis is pitched forwards, so it's coming down this way, and the rib cage is pitched out and it's going kind of up that way. Okay. So now, here's where we can start to square off the pelvis. Now if you look at these two bony prominences here, okay, you can feel those on your own hips. There's two bony points just here and here. I won't go into the terminology, but we've got one there, and it comes across, and we'll check the angle between those two, one over here. Basically that's where the lower abdominal muscles fit in, just like that. But that's, this point here is going to mark, where we can see that shadow, is going to mark the side of the box here of the pelvis. If I now square the pelvis off, okay, it should really come up, this should come up to the corners here, so I should bring that down a little bit. Alright, so you can see that that box inside there now. So with your tracing paper you can really explore this a bit more and break this down before you go ahead and draw it, and try to see now if you can turn that oval form into a more boxy square form. Okay, let's just bring our head up. So the head pretty much continues with this line of action up here, kind of comes up like that. Let's just see where the front of the face comes out just there. Something like that. And now, so if I draw my box here, we've got the box there, pelvis, comes out like this, this would be one point here, just over a little bit, and then come round up to here. Okay, our abdomen, lower abdomen sits in here, and this is basically where the legs, some of the muscles for the legs attach as well, but again, not an anatomy lesson in any way. So for the inside of this leg, I'm just going to use a straight line coming down, okay, and then I'm going to use a C curve here down to that knee, and then another C curve there down to the foot. Alright, this leg, again, I can use a straight line for the inside to begin with. And when I'm doing this, when I make the straight line, I'm just looking at the distance between the legs and this triangular shape created inside here. Okay, and again, just use a bit of a C curve there for this one, a C curve there for that, and a straight line or a C curve coming inward slightly for this one. Now I just want to see where this ankle is in relation to this foot, so just going across horizontally, straight line. So this ankle is a little bit lower. A nice simple foot again. Okay, that's kind of about right. And then I can go up here and just see how my arms come up. Again, just use simple lines to begin with. You can't see that. Let me just move the camera out a bit. I shouldn't lose focus. There we go. Okay, so this arm coming up, and here, this arm, comes up here. Okay, so you can see for the limbs I'm going from the widest part here, just oh god, there goes my rubber. Okay, so the widest part just there to the narrowest part of the wrists. And I'm just using two simple C curves, so to go from that wide part to this narrow wrist part just here. Okay. refining the contour a little bit. But again, that's not the purpose of this exercise. So we get to that stage, and then I can go in and just map out my shadow pattern again. Pelvis is just a bit too far down. It should be kind of going a bit more back in space, so it should be a little bit higher up, but as long as you can get the proportions relatively accurate, that's fine. Just need to bring this up a little bit. But I'll continue, I'll go with this. Let me have a look at the time we're doing for time, 13 minutes. Okay. Not spend too long on this now. Okay, so just keep working through with that shadow pattern as best you can. Just take your time working around the shadow pattern. Should have taken you maybe 10 or so minutes to just draw your basic forms, and then with the shadow you can just slow down a little bit. Not too much, just enough just to have a look at where the shadow's coming down the figure. Just drawing the contour edge of the shadow. That's what we're doing. Okay, so now I can fill that in. So this. Again, this is our cylinder. You can see this arm is going back in space, so we're seeing that, whereas this arm's a bit more straight up, so that would be like that. Yep. Let's just work down through here. If you have any questions of anything that I'm talking about here, you know, squaring off the pelvis, if you need any clarification, always do send me an email and we can discuss things in slightly more, I can elaborate on a few things relevant to any difficulties you might be having, or just clear up some points. Always send me an email, I'll reply very promptly. Okay, so let's just go back down again, see if you can see that. Alright, so my pelvis should have been a little bit higher, which would make the legs a little bit higher up as well, just because of this arching of the body, but just a minor little gripe. If you can get to this stage, that's exactly where we need to be. So again, do as many of these as you can. I did say in part one, you know, if you try to do 14, but you know, if you want to stick with this part of the exercise, the first part and the second part, doing your combined torso and your head and neck, doing several pages of those. You might even stick with that for say several days and do, you know, 20, 30, 40. The more you do, the more you're going to understand the principles, and everything will start to make more sense. And then you might move on to doing the same with adding your limbs. So you can spend as long with this as you like, and it's a very crucial part of drawing figures. It's just grasping this step, these two steps, part 1 and part 2. Okay, so that's that. And how long we got left? Oh, we've got 8 minutes. Can I? I probably can't. So let's have a little go there, see if I can just try the torso here. Now I think this is a watercolour pad. It's lost its cover, so I'm not entirely sure. But let's just go over here. Come back down again. Let's just go in and see if I can just do the torso here with the legs. I'll ignore the arms. Some of the leg in. I won't get a chance to do it all. I've got 6 minutes on the clock. It's quite good having this little timer. And if you can get a little egg timer, kitchen egg timer, quite useful just to time yourself as well. Obviously if you're working from those videos online, you will have a time limit to those anyway, if you follow the time limit and just go along with the video. But if you print off your pictures and you're doing the tracing paper overlay to begin with, then the little egg timer is quite a nice little device just to time yourself. And don't worry if you don't get everything done, just do as much as you can, but working to a time limit is quite useful actually. So let's go in quickly, just wet this whole area and hope the paper stays a bit wetter. Okay, so just a nice simple flesh. Pale. So it's a good idea actually to mix up your colour before you wet your paper, because obviously it's drying the whole time. I'm mixing my colour over here now, but because this is a watercolour paper, it should stay a bit wetter a bit longer. To that. A touch more blue, just to grey it down a little bit more. out on that. Okay, so let's dry that off with a hairdryer quickly. 3 minutes to go. Can I do it? Shadow colour. So I won't worry about the intermediate value now. I'm just going to go straight in with a shadow colour or value and colour. Quite a dark shadow on this one. Let's go with that. Okay. Again, I'm a bit warm, so more blue. I mean, yeah, you don't have to, as I mentioned, you don't have to try to mix the colour too accurately. It doesn't have to be exact, or the temperature, the warmth of the colour, as long as it's the values dark enough for it to read as a shadow. I mean, this I could go paler with this. As long as it's darker than the lit side, it's still going to read as a shadow. This brush being as pointed as it is, it's not really very good for softening edges, because it's just really, it's not giving me enough of a lead up to where I've been, if that makes sense. So great for detail, this brush would be, but not so good for softening my edges off. Got 52 seconds. Not bad going. Okay, so yeah, and again we can nip in with a dark. I'm going to go over time, so it's probably going to beep manically at me, so I'll have to just get ready to press stop on my timer. Okay, so again we can just go in with a bit of a dark on the lit side here, just to silhouette it a little bit. We talked a little bit about squaring off the pelvis. So your tracing paper will help you. Oh, I don't know why I've gone up there. Your arm's here. The tracing paper will help you just really try to find that box form inside the pelvic area, and then so we cover that to some degree, and then we attach our limbs, and then we've got this basic wash on here. So you don't have to do this wash stage that I'm doing here. I just think it just makes a page look a bit more, well, these little studies look a little bit more interesting just to have this. Okay, so I could go a lot darker with a shadow, so if I let it dry I'll go back in again, darken up that shadow a little bit, but for the purpose of this exercise I think we're good. You know, we could go more this value here, even darker, but as I say, as long as the shadow side is darker than the half tones and the lit side here, that's all really we're concerned with. Okay, so I hope that was a little slightly better example, folks, of the previous step. It's a cheaper watercolour paper, but performing a lot better than the mixed media pad. Okay, so good luck with that one, everyone, and I look forward to seeing your part 2s as well.